המשפטן האמריקני דרשוביץ הוא תומך גדול של ראש הממשלה המיועד בנימין נתניהו, אבל בכל הקשור לשינויים המתוכננים במערכת המשפט ובייחוד פסקת ההתגברות הם חלוקים. דרשוביץ אומר שפסקת ההתגברות היא טעות קשה שתקשה עליו ועל אחרים כמותו להמשיך ולהגן על ישראל בפורומים בינלאומיים. הערב שוחחתי איתו.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for having me on.
And thank you for coming on. You met with incoming Prime Minister Netanyahu here in Israel this week. You've been friends for many years. You said last week that the Israeli Supreme Court is a jewel of judiciaries around the world and that the overriding the Supreme Court is a terrible idea. Is that what you shared with him as well?
Yes, he asked me my views on the override. I gave him my views. I gave him some nuanced suggestions for what could be done. He listened very carefully, and he will do what he has to do. I think giving Knesset by 61 votes the power to override any decision of the Supreme Court, even if it involves the most basic human rights, would be a terrible mistake. But other reforms, more nuanced, nominal reforms, that's up to the people of Israel and the Knesset, subject to review by the Supreme Court. And that was the point of view that I presented to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he was very interested. He used the word balance several times in our discussion.
I wonder, because the new government appears quite committed to the idea of the override clause. Did you hear anything from him? And I wonder, again, if he hasn't listened to experts inside the country, do you expect him to listen to anyone outside Israel on this issue?
Well, I don't think he should listen to anyone outside of Israel except on their own merits. I suggested some ways of balancing the interests of both sides, and he seemed to like the idea of striking an appropriate balance, not accepting extremes on either side. And I think throughout his career, he's tried to bring balance to a country that is becoming more and more divided ideologically.
You know Israel well, and really there are two distinct groups in Israel. Those who believe the charges against Netanyahu are fabricated. They're also the ones who believe the override clause is a necessity because the judicial system is too powerful. On the other side, there are those who think Netanyahu's trial should go on and also believe the judicial system shouldn't be touched. You have a really interesting and complex stance because on the one hand, you're against Netanyahu's trial. You already said in the past that Israel should be ashamed for putting him on trial, but you also think the judicial system as a whole shouldn't really be tampered with.
I think the judicial system works. It's not broken. It shouldn't be tampered with, and it certainly shouldn't be tampered with as the result of any one case involving one particular individual. Having said that, I do not think the charges against Netanyahu stand up to scrutiny, and I hope they will be dropped or he will be acquitted. But without regard to that, I don't think the judiciary should be tampered with. It's been a remarkable success, both for Israelis and in the international community. Look, today the Supreme Court seems to often rule in favor of the left. Tomorrow they may rule in favor of the right, and the left will complain. That's what's happening in the United States today. The Supreme Court has moved right, and the left is complaining. So anytime you have a judiciary which has power, you're going to get complaints from those who feel that they're losing right now. Today they're losing, though. Tomorrow they may be winning, and they may regret having cut the power of the Supreme Court.
You've, as we said, been a staunch defender of Israel in many international arenas. You also believe that this would make, if the override clause passes, it will make it more difficult to defend Israel in international courts and elsewhere?
Yes, I think the issue of complementarity by which the International Criminal Court is precluded from intervening in a case involving a country which has a legitimate system of law under the rule of law. And I think the Supreme Court is a very important part of that complementarity, and it will be more difficult to defend Israel in international tribunals if the Supreme Court loses its power to strike down as unfair or in violation of basic laws, laws of the Knesset, which exceed, in the view of the Supreme Court, the authority of government. But I will continue to support and defend Israel, even if it disagrees with my own policies. That's what I've done for 50 years, and that's what I will continue to do.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you so much for having me.